Go ahead, Mayor.
Okay. We'll call the meeting to order for the City of Saratoga Springs, Tuesday, January 19th, 2021 at 6:01 p.m. I, Jim Miller, the Mayor of the City of Saratoga Springs, hereby determines that conducting the City Council meeting at an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. The World Health Organization, the President of the United States, the Governor of Utah, and the County Health Department have all recognized a global pandemic exists related to the new strain of the coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19. Due to the state of emergency caused by the global pandemic, I find that conducting a meeting at an anchor location under the current state of public health emergency constitutes a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the location. This written declaration expires 30 days from the date signed. So we'll call the meeting to order. We have present tonight Councilman Porter, Councilman Wilden, Councilman Podeska, Councilman McComber, and Councilman Karn. So we do have a quorum. I've asked Councilman Wilden to lead us in our invocation and Councilman McComber to lead us in our pledge.
You want to do pledge first normally or prayer first?
We've got prayer first this time.
Okay, do prayer first, yeah.
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for this evening. We're grateful to be able to be gathered virtually as community leaders, and we're grateful to be able to be in a position to help improve our city and the circumstances for all those around us. And we ask Thee to bless us this evening, that we'll be able to have the spirit of discernment and make good decisions. And we also ask Thee to bless those around us that are healthy, that they'll be able to continue to stay healthy, and those that are ill will be able to recover from their illness quickly. And we're so grateful for all the blessings we have, and these things we say in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Will everyone please join me in repeating the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have public input. Time has been set aside for the public to express ideas, concerns, and comments for subject matter not listed on the agenda. If you're here for the public hearing of the fiscal year 2021 budget amendment, please hold your comments for that hearing. Please be respectful in your comments. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Owen, did we have anybody send in comments or virtually attend?
We have 3 attendees, but I believe they're for item number 1, business item number 1. We did have one public comment sent in that, sorry, I thought I had it pulled up.
Is this from Chrissy Holmes on?
Yes, regarding the park, our acre ratio.
Yes.
Chrissy Holmes. Yep, that's it. Or Christina Hunter is who it's from. Do you want me to read that?
Yes, please.
Okay, it says, good evening, council members. My name is Christina Hunter. I would like to discuss the plans to change the park acre ratio to its original rate of 5.9 acres per 1,000 people instead of the new standard set at 3.72 for 2020 and beyond. Saratoga Springs has been able to establish and enjoy a thriving park scene in the city. I know myself and many feel that the park outlay and system has become one of our favorite parts of the city. I wish for us to have more parks, not less. I would like to formally propose we maintain the 5.9 PAR moving forward. This will not only benefit all those who currently reside in Saratoga Springs, but those moving into new communities that are being built in our great city. Together we can live, work, and play in Saratoga Springs as we continue to progress as a city. Respectfully, Christina Hunter.
Okay. Thank you, Owen. Okay, is there anybody else? Just the one? Then I will close the public input at this time and go on to reports. Any reports from the council? Okay. Mark?
Mayor Council, thanks. We had a great retreat, and I want to thank you all for your time in participating with that a couple of weeks ago. We are working with Mackie Smith and with Dan Griffiths. They, if you recall, are working on our strategic plan. They help facilitate our goals session. We hope to have a discussion item for you back at our next council meeting. We just weren't able to get it pulled together for this week, but we'll have that, and we'll start working towards that priority list that you'd identified as one of the council goals. Again, thank you very much. It was a very successful event, and we hope to have a much more comprehensive and a further discussion of those goals at our next meeting.
Thank you. We have the public hearing for fiscal year 2020 and 2021 budget amendments.
Is that my cue?
That's yours.
Okay. Owen, can I share a screen at all, or?
You should be able to.
Great. Okay. So this is the third budget amendment for fiscal year 2020-2021. Staff got a message from council earlier having a few questions. We responded to those questions. Hopefully that was able to answer any of the questions. If not, just let us know. We did make an edit to the computer equipment hardware line. There was a miscommunication there, and we brought that down to where staff felt it would be more appropriate. A few things to point out is there's a couple positions in this budget amendment that were approved by council for this budget year, but for various reasons were not included in the actual budget numbers. And so this budget amendment is partially, we're going to be fixing those errors, and staff felt it was appropriate to bring it before council again, just to I guess, clear it all. Those positions include the data analyst position, right there. The attorney, new city attorney that was hired. A EIT. The fleet admin position.
Mayor and council, real quickly, the EIT is an engineer in training. And so it's a lower level, staff level engineer to help out in the engineering department. And that was one of those positions that was unfunded last year as part of the COVID reductions. And we're looking to restate that position.
Yes, thank you. I forgot what the EIT stood for. And the last one was a new maintenance position for street lighting down here. And so those were stated earlier, approved by council for as part of this budget, but were for various reasons not included. And so this budget amendment would help fix those errors and bring them into line with what the council approved last year.
Were they not included, but they were hired, or were they not included because we held off because of COVID?
The EIT was one that was reduced because of COVID. The other positions were described in the budget document, but only a portion of the salary was included. And so, again, just to make things right, we wanted to go back and make sure that we had those formally authorized by you as a council. Obviously, we just did not want to, short the overall operations going forward. I'm sorry, did I tackle your question, Michael?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then, as council knows, we are beginning on next year's budget, and it was felt that a couple of different of those items should be brought forward and made as part of the current running budget. A few of those were positions. One such position is increasing the hours for the payroll technician that the city employs. This is due to increased staffing. So there's just more need on that end for payroll services. A new forensics evidence technician for the police department. Reclassifying 6 firefighter paramedics to fire engineer paramedics for a mid-year adjustment. A new building inspector, which will help the building department handle the all the building permits and everything else going on, all the building in the city. Yeah, and then reclassifying of a civic events coordinator to public relations specialist and events supervisor. Those positions were felt like those changes were needing to happen sooner rather than waiting for the next budget cycle to begin. In addition, there are a couple of changes to one, like the treasury, admin bank charges, non-departmental, and then general government buildings and grounds, where there has been changes for a few years and a lot of those various line items. And so it was felt that the city needed to make a few adjustments on those to better reflect the true costs of city operations.
Mark, can I ask on this? Your explanation that you gave to me earlier on this helped quite a bit, where we're not necessarily changing what we've spent in prior years. It just kind of washed out, for a better choice of words, in a larger budget item. This provides more granularity. So is that correct? We're not saying, hey, we're going to spend an additional $98,000 on telephone.
Correct. And so, like, for example, I think another great example is the Visa credit card charges, right? And so what we did when COVID hit is, because a lot of people had shifted over to paying with credit cards online, we implemented the 3% charge for anything over $500. So for large building permits or impact fees or whatever, we would be recouping the 3%, but for under the 500, we weren't necessarily charging that. So for example, this line item is, I believe, about $120,000, give or take. A portion of that is for these new charges and kind of an upsurge in people using their credit cards during COVID. Again, partially because we've closed our doors, partially those other things. Again, we've always had credit card payments. We just haven't necessarily adjusted the budget because the overall budget could sustain it. And typically what we've done is, if the bottom line of the budget could handle absorbing those costs, we would just keep it the same. And our concern is that, as we look across the organization, some of those types of things that we've just generally absorbed in those funds, we want to make sure that we've increased the budget so that we're capturing those funds. Please keep in mind, though, like in the credit card example, all of the credit card payments that would be utility payments generally are already covered in the utility funds. And that cost, although it's being tracked in, say, the general fund, it gets reimbursed through interfund transfers from the utility funds to offset that cost in future transfers and things like that. So again, it's more of an adjustment. The phone one is another example. This year we did expend more in phones. We've issued some phones for people that are working from home and things of that nature. It's really just more of an adjustment to that line item, not necessarily 100% new cost. Unfortunately, descriptions weren't well-rounded in their description of saying, look, yes, we've done this before. Yes, we've spent money on these before, but we're just now making a position to kind of more adjust the budget with what our actuals have been looking like.
So Mark, when people are working from home, are we giving them cell phones, or are they getting a home line through their internet provider, which is free?
Which in some cases we've actually bought physical phones, and then it can be voice over IP. And so we just have bought hard phones, and we've given people hard phones that they plug in, and voila, it's the cost of the phone and things of that nature. So, but
surprised they wouldn't want a headset over a phone, but. For me, and there's the plan when they're come back to the office, they'll turn that stuff in so that we can have it as for other people to use.
For future growth and expansion, absolutely. Yep.
Are we giving people 2 computers, one at the office and one at home, or do they just have one computer assigned to them?
Generally speaking, one computer. But like, for example, we did acquire some monitors for home docking stations and things like that, so that they can just plug in back and forth wherever they're at. And again, we've documented all of that, and a lot of that was purchased with the CARES Act funding that was available for us. So when people leave, that will be accounted for. People have checked it out, and it's to be returned. We've also moved to more of the hoteling concept here at the city, and we're working right now on having touchdown stations here as opposed to permanent desks here at City Hall for some of our employees. And so we're still transitioning in that direction. We've discussed that before at the start of COVID.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with having multiple for work from home. Work from home in typical in businesses now, very little as their companies buying you your extra screen. They'll give you one computer and then you're responsible for any kind of upgrades you want from there for the most part. But I just want to make sure that we're obviously, trying to adjust for COVID, but when we are allowing people to come back to the office and they choose to stay home, I don't want to reward them for staying home versus coming back into the office necessarily. So it's something that we probably would want to discuss as a group.
Sure. And we're still encouraging people to work from home as much as possible at this point.
Yeah, right now I get it, but the vaccines are coming out. More and more people are looking to get back into the office if they can, that kind of thing. So appreciate it. And then I had one other thing, but I sort of hijacked Stephen. He was asking questions. I apologize.
Good. Mark answered my question.
Okay, great. So on the 25,000, those are fees that we've charged for the people over 500. Is that what that represents? In the notes, partially offset by account revenues, 25,000.
Yes.
That's the people who are over $500 and the fees we've charged, the 3%.
Correct.
So we're looking at a net impact of about 75,000, and then you said that was mostly absorbed by the utility fund.
Correct. Yeah. Most of those fees come in the utility funds accounts. So
just to make a note on that, that's just what we've collected year to date.
Yeah. So that's a year to date. That's a year to date number. So that potentially can go up. My other thought was, and Stephen sort of mentioned this, and I think we'll put it on the record, where we might want to do the opposite and discourage people from coming in and bringing COVID or bringing sicknesses to the offices and paying in person, and actually charging a premium for that instead of using credit card or a debit card of some sort, but automatic payment.
Well, and so like, for example, I'll do bank transfers. And so I can pay my bill, I initiate the transfer and there's no fee, there's no charge, and it's an electronic transfer. I mean, obviously that doesn't cost the city. Credit cards are always that tricky. We want to make sure people have the option to pay. But again, that's actually a great policy discussion for us, perhaps for another council meeting, of what you would like us to do with those fees to, do we encourage people to pay with a credit card? We do have the electronic transfers. A lot of it's going to be education. But again, typically we've not charged that in the past for utility billing.
Yeah, I don't want to charge that. I want to charge people for coming in person and forcing a person to work the desk, and it costs a lot more for the city. Actually, if we really want to do the math, having somebody come in and make a payment now almost costs us more than the transaction fees on credit cards to have a staff person sitting there taking those cash payments and the exposure situations, transmitting cash. There's a lot of talk about removing cash. I'm not a fan of it, but it's going to cost, it'd be a lot more expensive to have cash on hand, et cetera.
Great.
And who knows, with the new administration, they're saying there's a war on cash, so we'll see.
Mark, I had one question on those fees that we end up paying and not collecting to be under 500. Is that something we can track and put back towards CARE funding?
So we've already collected all of the CARES money, the CARES Act funding. It was just going to be easier for us to count all of our public safety expenses because those were given kind of a blanket cover, than to get all of the small items and stuff like that. So fundamentally, you were not able to charge the CARES Act for lost revenue. And so that would be one of those things that would likely fall into that category. Again, we recouped all of our CARES Act funding that we were eligible for by claiming public safety. And so in the broader scheme of things, think of it this way: we collected $2.2 million over the last 2 fiscal years that helped cover other expenses in the general fund. And so, it made those funds available to kind of pick up these small things that weren't necessarily directly reimbursable under the CARES Act.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Any other questions from council?
There's no other questions. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that we approve the public hearing hearing item 1, fiscal year 2020 through 2021 budget amendments, resolution R21-6 dated today.
I'll second.
We have a first from Councilman Wilden, a second from Councilman Porter. Any further discussion?
Mayor, maybe I missed it. Did you have a public hearing on this?
Oh, you're right. Thank you for catching that. We will open it back up and then come back to the motion. Owen, was there any comments sent in?
No, Mayor, none that I've seen, and no additional attendees.
Okay. So with that, we'll close the public hearing for the fiscal year 2021 budget. And we have a motion on the table that was first from Councilman Wilden, a second from Councilman Porter. Do a roll call. Councilman Wilden,
Aye.
McComber,
Aye.
Deska,
Aye.
Karn,
Aye.
Porter.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Move on to our business items. We have the North Shore Lift Station Reimbursement Agreement, Resolution R21-7.
I'll go ahead and handle that, I guess. Mayor, good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a reimbursement agreement, and it basically follows the form that we've had with D.R. Horton with respect to reimbursements for installation of system improvements and upsize of certain improvements that are dedicated to the city. Staff has verified the costs, agree with the reimbursement costs. And at this point, we are recommending approval of this existing agreement. However, we did want to mention really quickly that D.R. Horton has requested some red lines. And the red lines mostly pertain to a request that they receive some cash reimbursements up front for previously paid impact fees. The Utah Impact Fees Act does not require that. It requires cities to provide impact fee credits, but not reimbursement or cash payments. I can show you the changes really quickly if you'd like. Let me just share the screen with you if I can. I don't know if Owen, if you
When were they submitted?
given me permission. They were submitted last Friday. This was kind of a last minute reimbursement agreement anyway, so I don't blame the request being made. They have asked for cash up front in the past, and we said no, we'll just follow our standard regular agreement. They are asking for that again, and this is a little bit different from the request that they made in the past in the sense that they want a refund of previously paid impact fees. I'm not sure how insistent they are on that, but staff is recommending that the council go ahead and approve the draft that's in the packet. Let me share. Hopefully you can see this right now. I can just go over their costs really briefly. This first.
Kevin, just a note too, we do have Marcel and Rob as
Okay.
panel in case there are questions from the council.
And Kevin,
Okay.
could you increase the text size on that? Get rid of your
bet.
margins and kind of blow that up so we can see it a little bit better.
You bet.
Thanks.
Let's see.
Bottom slide bar on the bottom right-hand corner.
Okay. I'll increase the size and then we can.
That's good. Thanks.
Okay. All right, so the first changes are just some minor tweaks to clarify this split of some of our design costs, the city's design costs. There's nothing that we disagree with in this language. It's just clarifying the language. So we don't have any concerns with that. This next section does talk about this cash reimbursement. They want a reimbursement for phase 1, phase 2 sewer impact fees. And then they want cash reimbursements for the next phase. I think I understand this for the after issuance of 230 building permits is when they want that cash payment. And then if anything is unpaid at that point, they're okay with impact fee credits. However, they're requesting that the city consider cash reimbursements to fully reimburse them for the lift station improvements. So those are basically the requests that they've made. We, as staff, we worked on several of these reimbursement agreements with D.R. Horton, and therefore we're not comfortable with this language. And like I said, the Impact Fees Act doesn't require cash payments. It does require impact fee credits. I do believe that cash payments would be, we would be responsible for cash payments at the end of the project if they weren't fully reimbursed, but there's nothing that I'm aware of in the law that says cash needs to be paid up front. So that's all I have. Any other questions?
If I could speak to it real quickly, Mayor and Council, I do not recommend that we accept this language. Our development agreement allows us to reimburse developers cash. It allows for us to do some of these types of reimbursements, but our development agreement is always after performance. And so in essence, what this request is doing is trying to claw back impact fees that have been paid, and frankly, try and get credits in play before the actual improvements are made. And so that to me is problematic. I don't recommend that we accept this portion of their changes of language. I'm fine if the council would like us to look at potentially working on a cash reimbursement, but what I'm hesitant on is really the precedent. As a council, we typically are trying to reimburse developers, and we're trying to work with developers. Them coming in and after the fact wanting to claw back potentially, $250,000 worth of impact fees that have been paid at this point is more of a cash problem that I see. As a council, I think you need to keep in mind that we've already cash funded a bond for a lot of these same sewer improvements that make servicing this property even of a possibility. And so at this point, for us to go back and kind of put themselves in front of the line for reimbursements, I think is a bad precedence for us to set. I'm fine discussing it. Our current development agreement, the one that was in the packet, it allows for us to do that, and it allows to work on development reimbursements. I don't think that it's a good idea for us to enter a new development agreement that's inconsistent with the other development agreements that we've signed, and in essence have a clawback factor. And if I could, for an example, illustrative point, if you recall about a year ago, Oakwood Homes entered into a development agreement with us. They'd already paid a few $100,000 worth of sewer impact fees. We did not give them the clawback clause. They asked for that same clause. We did let them, once they made their payment and commitment to that project, we allowed them to use credits at that point going forward. But we didn't allow them to claim credits prior to those credits being funded. And then we certainly didn't give them a clawback provision. And so again, it's a little inconsistent with what we've done in the past. If it's something that you would like to do, it's certainly something you can direct us to do. I do not recommend it at this point. The other terms were fine. The terms that were in the previous paragraph, as far as the reimbursement parameters between us and D.R. Horton for engineering fees, I can live with that. I don't recommend that we approve these changes.
If I may, Mayor?
Yes.
To give a thought. I don't want to set any new precedents. I'd like to keep it consistent how we've always done it, especially where we did not give that cash opportunity for Wander. I don't like picking winners. I like to keep it as consistent as possible. So I agree with the staff recommendation that we just keep it how it was in the packet originally and following our development agreement. I'm happy to do the reimbursements we've done for many, many years. We've been doing this. I don't really want to start this, because then all of a sudden every major developer will start reaching out saying, hey, what about my cash? That would be great for me to have some cash to go buy more property somewhere or whatever. So I agree that we should not adopt this new language, but keep it as we had it originally in the packet. That's just me as one of five.
Mayor and Councilor Crissell, and I believe she's got some colleagues that are also online. If they have any comments, you're certainly welcome to take those. I just wanted to be very direct with what we're recommending. I did see the earlier draft of their changes, and I told Kevin that we were not comfortable making that recommendation, hence the standard development agreement that's in the packet.
Are there comments from the developer?
And it's good to hear. Thank you. I'm glad to be here tonight. Thanks for this time. Glad to hear from Mark and Kevin and the positions in what I've been talking about. I hadn't understood exactly how it was being interpreted on the city side. So hearing this information tonight helps me. I don't believe we're asking for cash that we haven't already given to the city through our impact fee payments. And so I don't see it as a clawback, but I see the caveat that Mark has pointed out that you guys don't pay for the improvement until it is complete. And we would be happy to add language that would frame that so that no payments are due until the improvement is complete, which is what we've always done in the past. So if there was some language that maybe framed those timeframes as to when those payments would be due, I think that would be helpful. Like I said, we're not asking for any cash other than fees that have already been paid. And as far as the 230 units, the reason we're asking for that in a separate kind of outlier framing as the second condition in what you see on the screen is because although D.R. Horton is the developer, this Ascend project is being assigned to one of our sister subsidiaries. So the cash won't come from our Salt Lake division. It will come from another division within D.R. Horton. And so we just want to make sure that those payments qualify as reimbursement as part of this project as well. And because we're paying those cash payments, we'd like to see that come back. The time frame for that won't happen until after the probably until after the improvement is complete. So I think that there's some timing kind of an issues that we could frame in this that would allow for better understanding between the parties.
And again, Mayor and Council, I appreciate that. We have the ability to reimburse developers. We have that ability under our current development agreement. These changes kind of bind your hands, and I, for that reason, would not recommend accepting that. I think if you would like us to reimburse them for example, once we enter into the development agreement, have us toll, basically keep track of the impact fees we collect going forward. That's certainly something that we could do, and I believe that that's not too dissimilar to what we did over in Legacy Farms. However, there's roughly $250,000 worth of impact fees that have already been paid, and those fees, again, if we're defunding the revenues that we've received, that's also defunding the projects we've already started, we've already committed to, or for example, the bonding that we've already put in place to build the rest of that project. So again, I do see that as a somewhat different animal. If you wanted to, identify future impact fees from this point going forward and have us work with them on reimbursement, again, that's a policy decision for you on that. But for the clawback or for those fees that have been paid prior to this date, I do not make that recommendation.
And can I just add really briefly? So the first thing is all of our agreements don't require any reimbursement until those improvements have been installed and inspected and approved as meeting city standards. And if you see that first sentence there, it's specified there, and we have to actually verify the actual expenses. So that's the first thing I wanted to point out. That's standard with all these reimbursement agreements. The second thing I wanted to point out is D.R. Horton is asking for, this is what, and perhaps I wasn't very clear in describing what the changes are. They're asking for a reimbursement of sewer impact fees that have been previously paid in phases 1 and 2. But as Mark has mentioned, those impact fees have been spent on system improvements and capital projects. So those have already been encumbered. And I think it's important for, hopefully Chriselle understands that the city has spent a lot of money on system improvements that have benefited the property. and that D.R. Horton's impact fees have been spent and have been encumbered already to benefit their property. So that's important to clarify. And with impact fees, it really comes down to, a lot of it comes down to timing and installation of system improvements. And that's the issue right now, is just the timing isn't very good for the city, and the obligation to reimburse for those impact fees. And so our city staff is recommending impact fee credits only at this point. And that's all that our obligation is under Utah law, as far as I'm aware.
Mark, maybe you can answer this question for me. And I don't know if there's somebody else from D.R. Horton that still needs to speak, but essentially, when any developer enters an agreement like this with the city, they're and we do a reimbursement agreement, they basically all get in line, and as other developers that benefit from those improvements come in and pay impact fees, then they're reimbursed from those monies that come in from future development. And my understanding is if we were to approve this language, it would essentially be putting D.R. Horton, they wouldn't get at the back of the line, they'd get to stand in the front of the line and get their money before people who have already put in improvements that are now 10 years old would be reimbursed for their improvements. Is that?
Yeah. So for example, we got $4 million from another developer in the city for some of the sewer projects that we just did. We gave them the same deal. They can use credits, and then any credits that go unremained, we have the option to then pay those credits to them, at a later date. So again, in theory, again, this is an ask that they've made, and I don't begrudge them for asking, because they want to cash fund their project up front, and they'd like to utilize those funds. I'm not saying that that's something that we couldn't recommend, but until we have an opportunity to sit down and get our arms around that, as you know, we're in the middle of budgeting for that fund. At our retreat, we discussed several sewer projects. Is paying them back right now a higher priority than some of the other sewer projects that we've already prioritized above this particular project? Right. And in essence, by entering into this agreement, what you're doing is, by contract, you're allowing, in this case, D.R. Horton to make your priorities for you. And so, again, I think it's great discussion. I would happily say, okay, we can go look at whether that $250,000 is something that we could look at reimbursing. I'm happy to have that conversation. But again, if we're short, projects that have already been prioritized, that are already critical to our infrastructure improvement, and we're making a development agreement that makes that prioritization moot because we've refunded cash that was paid not under a reimbursement agreement, it was paid beforehand, it's problematic in that regard. So again, I think I understand their request, and I'm not trying to be insensitive to that. I'm just saying we've already discussed other priorities that we'll be bringing back as part of your ranking process in a couple of weeks. I'm not sure that entering into a development agreement that preempts your ranking process for those projects is necessarily a good idea at this point.
And that's well taken. As far as the language around the Ascendant North Shore, I'm not comfortable, quite frankly, approving any of these changes, just because this is the first time I'm seeing them. If D.R. Horton wants to talk with staff and bring back Chriselle mentioned that it's not necessarily super time sensitive about the Ascendant North Shore. If they can work with you on something that staff can bring back with a positive recommendation on changing the language so that we can address that, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with changing the other language up at the top about the I can't scroll on this, but the additional
engineer,
the additional design costs. If you want to bring those back, but I'm again leery of setting a precedent, and I'm not. As you said, we're in the middle of trying to figure out where all these projects are going to get funding from, and so to hamstring ourselves before we know what that looks like doesn't seem to be wise in my view. So I'm with Councilman McComber. I would support approving the language in the packet, and then if they want to bring back the additional design costs and the ascend at North Shore language was something that staff can forward a positive recommendation on, then we can change that in the future.
So can I just briefly address that, Councilman Porter?
Sure.
This isn't a substantive change from what we'd already addressed. They just were clarifying some of the language that we had.
So you're
this language here is
that was
approving
the
that
original.
tonight?
Yep.
Okay.
well,
fine.
with
That's
these,
what I was going to say too.
with these red lines, these are okay as far as I'm concerned. They're
Yeah,
not.
they're just cleaning
Just
up how it's
so we
worded.
can reference what section that is in the motion.
Yeah, and that's fine. I think they were good changes, and probably definitely clarified the intent. And then down here, like Mark mentioned, I wanted to point this out as well. This, if you look at this language without the red lines, it still allows staff, and of course, subject to council approval if it goes outside the budget, but it still gives staff the option to reimburse D.R. Horton first with cash. That's always been in there. So we're asking the council to approve this agreement without the mandatory language. That still gives us the discretion to discuss with D.R. Horton in the future about whether a cash payment makes sense. And sometimes it will make sense. And some of those situations might be where that system improvement was scheduled to be completed soon. And so we need to spend those impact fee funds to get that done. But it's a really complicated formula depending on the budget and when those system improvements are scheduled to be installed. Because we have spent and encumbered other impact fee funds for other system improvements right now. So that's what we're asking. And we can always bring it back for an amendment in the future. The council would ask, or the staff would ask for the council to approve this version with the engineering consultant fees, the clarification on that approved tonight,
Okay.
but not the rest of the red
Again,
lines.
could you scroll up to that section just so
The
that
section 2.
when we make a motion, we know what to reference, what changes we're approving and which ones we're not.
Section 1 is the section that it's
Section
in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can I make a quick comment? This is Rob Hartshorn with D.L. Horton. I'm our in-house counsel.
Okay.
If we go back down, Kevin, if you wouldn't mind, to the last insertion for the lower section that we've been talking about. If we operate under the assumption now that there won't be any cash reimbursement there, whenever there is an option for a city to pay in cash, it never happens. So we're counting on, without any of our insertions, that we're going to be left with credits. And which means this last provision doesn't work for us, because if we get to the end, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chriselle, as our project manager for North Shore, the most likely scenario is we get to the end of the project and then we have to be in the business now of selling these.
So, Rob, if I could, I'm going to stop you right there before you make a very fatalistic strategy move. If you were to ask your client, Chriselle would easily explain to you that we refunded a lot of cash to you through Legacy Farms. And so for you to make that assertion is frankly not correct. And I'm going to respectfully ask you to not try and go down that path.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and finish, Mark. Thanks for your thoughts. Here we have no guarantee. And if Mark wants to benefit from past behavior, but we don't get to benefit from our past good behavior. So I don't like being interrupted. I don't like the proposition that just because someone's acted properly in the past, that they get to benefit from that in the future, because we don't get treated that way here at this table with you, Mark.
Hey, Rob, can I just ask for sorry to interrupt you, Rob. Are you referring to this sentence?
Yeah, so that
okay,
sentence,
this isn't in the draft of the agreement that's in the council's packet. This was added by presumably your in-house, or not your in-house, but your contract attorney.
yeah, I know. I'm still trying to explain my position here. Sorry, Kevin.
Okay, no, you're fine. I'm just clarifying that this was added after the council.
Yeah,
version. Go ahead.
that was added, assuming that we would be able to get the language and the further up in this provision about getting
Oh,
cash.
okay.
So
Okay,
without
that's
the cash, being on the table, we as a developer would have to now, if we're stuck with impact fees or with credits rather, and we're through our complete project. I heard you say something at the beginning of this meeting, Kevin, that if we're through the entire project and we have a balance of unused credits, are we then going to be cashed out, or are we left to go on the market to try to sell these to other developers?
Well, you certainly can sell the credits, but what would happen is you would get in line with other projects in the reimbursement. So as the city would receive impact fee funds, you would be in line to receive that as long as there weren't priorities that occurred before this reimbursement agreement. So if we have sewer impact fees that come in, we actually reimburse developers that came before you first, and then we get to D.R. Horton after that. And so you would get reimbursed before reimbursement agreements that come after you, but not before.
And that makes sense to me. And that's how it's been done in the past, which I understand. But our concern is right now, if that amount balloons up because more work is added to the project, then is there an option for us to have a sunset provision where we know that we can look forward to having this money within a certain amount of time? If it's completely open-ended, I don't know the track record of how long it takes for these fees, these credits to be reimbursed when we get in line in our position, I guess. Is there any sort of clarification we can get from staff about when, timing, or if we're willing to put anything in this agreement from your position about timing, so that's not an indefinite wait forever, or is that not going to be considered?
I can address, Mark, you're welcome to respond too, but I don't think that tonight's the time to be discussing those red lines and making changes on the fly like this.
I'm not suggesting we make changes right now. I'm just asking for context here. If we're gonna, if we're both giving our sides to why we made this and why these revisions are important to us, this is the question for us. Is it's open ended. We get in line and we don't know when we're getting it back, and I'm just wondering if we can get some more color on that.
So the answer is, I think to your question, Rob, you're asking us to reimburse you 100% of all of the impact fees that we've collected year to date in the sewer impact fee fund. And so that's part of why your ask is such an enormous ask on our part. I refer back to my previous comments. We have the ability under our standard development agreement to address those concerns, and codifying it in a amended development agreement is not something that I would be recommending to the council.
That's not my question, Mark. That's not my question.
Well, you've heard my answer. So as far as would we do a balloon payment after, after you've used up all your credits, and again, Rob, your statement implies that we haven't done this with others. Again, just a couple of years ago, the mayor and council authorized us to reimburse other development agreements that were in the sewer system. And so we do have a long track record of reimbursing those things at the end as there's funding available for those projects.
Yeah, I hear you, Mark. I'm just asking a different question here. Is can you provide some color about timing?
No, I cannot, because hypothetically, let's say we see another bubble of 2008 and all development activity stops. We're not going to commit to cash fund using operation funds, impact fees that theoretically should be reimbursed out of impact fee funds.
And just to interject, I do appreciate the city's position and Rob's position as well. We do have a concern with what we could be sitting and looking at when we're finished. I do understand the history that we've had, Mark, and appreciate that relationship. And we have received cash on other reimbursement agreements at the time that's appropriate. I think from my standpoint tonight, I would just proffer that maybe since this is the first time we're hearing and I'm getting to understand timing from the city's perspective and projects that are upcoming and funding, that possibly we table this agreement, because I would prefer not to come back with an amended agreement. I'd like to get it right the first time, but I don't know if council is open to that. I know that we've briefly gone back and forth on email today about not tabling, but I would suggest that the developer is open to that so that we can discuss with staff timing and logistics of concerns.
Hey, I'll just add that, hey, Chriselle, I appreciate your specific comments and staff. I think I'm in agreement with Councilman Porter. I'm fine with the changes, and I think I appreciate it in the ask that you've made that you're trying to manage cash flows, and so is the city. And so I'm fine with the minor changes, and then I would be fine with what staff can recommend as a positive recommendation in the future. But like the rest it's already stated, as far as we can't tie our hands managing our cash flow, but just wanted to mention, I appreciate your specific comments, Chriselle.
Thank you.
To Chriselle's point, I'm comfortable tabling it if she would prefer that to, multiple iterations of going over this. I'm comfortable tabling it, so they can bring back one completed form and we can just do this once.
Yeah, I'm in favor of that as well. I don't want to relive the 20 times you come back with changes all the time like we did with Legacy Farms. It became almost a joke. I'd rather do it once the first time. I almost wish that this wouldn't even have come before the council. Why, Kevin? Because technically we didn't receive this before and we're showing it on public record and we had no way of even preparing our thoughts and comments around it. I appreciate the recommendation from staff to say we would just approve the one that was in the packet. I would rather have just done that, or the council needs to pull it. The staff needs to pull it before it came, the one that they didn't want, if that's not what the developer was wanting to agree to. So feel free to work through it, but I'll tell you this, we put more than just the $200 and whatever $1,000 into making this project even feasible, with so much money going into a sewer project in the north end of the city that North Shore benefits and makes this possible. And we'll be continually putting money into this area, from recreation to other things. I know that's not applied to the sewer fund, but I would be very hesitant to cash out and put a priority over agreements that we have made with other developers, because then we'll get a new line of developers coming back to try and amend their agreements. So look forward to getting a completed one that doesn't have to have red lines, just says here's our agreement and that staff can recommend. So I support tabling as well.
And can I make a recommendation? If we do table it and then we get something that gets submitted and then the developer submits another red line a couple days before, and I'm not faulting anywhere, they just know that either we go with what's in there or the whole thing gets pulled. Because I don't think it's fair of staff to be, and this happens repeatedly. I think, I know Chriselle, you recognize this, probably Rob doesn't, but our staff is very accommodating to developers to try to get things in last minute. And I would say with some other developers, we would have just not even considered this. So that would be my request. After it's been submitted to council, any other changes, they get an option of completely pulling it, or we go with what's already in there so that staff doesn't get beat up running around trying to accommodate last minute requests.
Okay. Well, I will entertain a motion if there's no further comments.
I move to table.
Councilman Carnes?
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Councilman Palmer.
I move to table the North Shore Lift Station Reimbursement Agreement Resolution R21-7 dated today to a future council date once the developer and staff can come with a unified recommendation.
I'll second.
I have a first from Councilman McComber, a second from Councilman Carn. Any further discussion? Porter?
Aye.
Carn?
Aye.
McComber?
Aye.
Wilden?
Aye.
Tedesca?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously to table the item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
And we have the minutes from January 5th, 2021.
We still have business item 2.
Oh, yes. Just getting excited, Chris, so you can get out and celebrate your birthday.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I really do.
So business item 2, an ordinance of City of Saratoga Springs, Utah, repealing and replacing recent amendments to the standard technical specifications and drawings.
Kevin, do you want to tackle that one for us?
You bet. So in our engineering standards, we have always had this language, and I'll share my screen with you again. That basically says that the city, when engineer reviews plans, the city engineer accepts the project engineer's design. And accept means that basically that the plans are in general compliance with the city's plan preparation requirements. It's never shifted responsibility from the project engineer to the city engineer or to the city, because a project engineer still has the obligation to install the project per the city's engineering standards. Recently, we asked for the council to consider this stamp. And let's see, let me get to the packet now so I can pull that up. I don't have that stamp. So we had just asked for that stamp to be adopted in the engineering standards. We've received some feedback that that stamp is going to cause some concern up at the during the legislative session. So we're asking for the council to basically repeal and replace the ordinance that was adopted at the last council meeting with the changes that did not pertain to that stamp. And like I said, it really is not going to have a substantive effect on the engineer and how plans are reviewed. It's basically going to be the same because we still have this acceptance definition. It really isn't going to cause staff too much concern. We just didn't want to, we wanted to avoid the heartburn that some of the developers and people in the development community were having over that stamp. Any questions about that?
I did have a 30-minute speech prepared, but in honor of Councilman Karn's birthday, I'll wish him a happy birthday and skip my 30-minute diatribe.
What a
Yep, happy
present.
birthday,
Thank you,
Chris,
Weldon.
and makes sense, Kevin.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve business item 2, ordinance 21-2 dated today.
I have a first from Councilman Porter,
I'll second.
second Councilman McComber. Any further discussion? Wilden,
Aye.
Karn,
Aye.
Tedesca,
Aye.
McComber,
Aye.
Porter.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Now we have the minutes for January 5th, 2021. I'll entertain a motion.
So made.
I'll second.
I have a first from Councilman McComber, a second Councilman Wilden. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We do have need for closed session tonight.
I move for going to closed session as outlined on the agenda.
I have a first from Councilman McComber,
Second.
second from Councilman Karn. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll see you guys in the closed session. Okay, we've
Two of
come out
us.
of a closed session.
There we go.
There's-
Hey, guys.
There's no other agenda items, so at this time, we will close the public meeting and thank everyone for participating. Thank you, Owen, for hanging out while we were all leaving you alone in a virtual world.
Unfortunately, you've been dismissed as part of that closed meeting.
Okay,
Okay.
start cleaning my stuff out then.
So we don't have to, we don't, I mean, Jim, just remind me, we don't disclose the actual decision in the public meeting? Oh, I
No,
thought we
it's
had.
personnel.
Not for personnel.
I thought we had.
So
some
for the
stuff.
public meeting, we did not talk about Owen. That was a complete joke. So now that's on record.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Cool, guys.
Okay,
Have a good
thanks.
night. See
Have a
you.
good night.